Wrath of the Lich King brings tons of new items, and with every new phase of content in any expansion ever in WoW, the trinkets are always massive items and cause drama, hard reserves in pugs, and big prices in GDKP runs. What are those trinkets in Tier 7 going to be? But before we get on to what those trinkets are going to be, let's look at some good trinkets that you're going to want before you worry about trying to get the big trinkets. There's quite a few trinkets people are going to be trying to get before even stepping foot in Naxx. Let's look at those first. For 40 Emblems of Justice, which is the currency you obtain from Heroics, you can get which outside of Professions will likely be your first epic trinket. The caster version is called Sundial of the Exiled, which gives you 84 crit rating, and your harmful spells have a chance to increase your spell power by 590. That's for 10 seconds. The melee version is called Mirror of Truth, which improves your critical strike rating by 84, and chance on melee and ranged critical strikes increase your attack power by 1000 for 10 seconds. The healing version is called the Egg of Mortal Essence, which increases your spell power by 98, and it gives your direct healing and heal over time spells a chance to increase your haste rating by 505 for 10 seconds. And finally, the Tank Trinket, which isn't amazing, but it's still half decent, which increases your dodge rating by 84, with a usability that increases dodge rating by a further 335 for 20 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. There's also some noteworthy trinkets that come from Professions, such as dual crafting. Monarch Crab for tanks early on is going to be great, giving you 63 stamina and 2 extra sockets to put even more stamina on. And you do actually get a usability on it that increases dodge rating by 300 for 10 seconds, and it's only on a 1-minute cooldown. You also get the Ruby Hair, which has got 62 stamina with 2 sockets, where you can, again, get even more stamina. And this one on use increases your speed by 30% for 6 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. And Sapphire L is definitely worth a mention as well. It's only really going to be your Holy Paladins that are going to want this, but with 42 intellect and another 2 sockets for even more intellect, it's a really, really good trinket for Holy Paladins. And on use, you can restore 2.3k mana over 12 seconds as well on a 5-minute cooldown. So you can basically say that this trinket gives you an extra 2.3k maximum mana every single boss fight. There's a couple from Heroic Dungeons as well that people are definitely going to be wanting to get pretty quick, such as from Violet Hold Heroic, the final boss drops Mark of the War Prisoner, which improves your hit rating by 73 and on use increases spell power by 346. Now, the reason this is particularly good is because obviously getting hit capped as a caster, well, as any DPS, is super important, but being able to control the proc and use it with all your other cooldowns, it is a really strong blue trinket, to say it only comes from a heroic. And then exactly the same, but for the melee this time, getting a hit rating and on use, increasing your attack power by 670 for 20 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. You've got Sphere of the Red Dragon's Blood, which comes from Kerashtraza, which is the final boss in the Nexus Heroic. There are other trinkets from Professions and from Dungeons, but they're the ones that I feel are really particularly powerful. You could say the Alchemy Trinket, which is particularly very good for Resto Druids, or even the Meteorite Whetstone, which comes from Utgard Pinnacle. But as I say, the ones with hit on, particularly strong. Now, before we even get into Tier 7, one of the most obvious trinkets, which is going to cost a pretty penny, is Darkmoon Card Greatness. It may not come from a raid, but it's going to be heavily sought after by so many classes. Ferals, Rogues, Warriors, Holy Paladins, Ret Paladins, DKs, Hunters. Yeah, you get it. Pretty much everyone. And that's because being BIS for multiple phases for multiple classes is going to make this one of the most expensive things on the auction house for quite some time. For those of you that don't know, this comes from combining all the Noble cards from Inscription to create the Nobles deck. You then hand this deck in at Darkmoon Fair when it comes round and pick which version of the trinket you want. Stepping foot into your first raids being 10-man Naxx, you're not going to see a great deal of drama around Embrace of the Spider, but as an early on trinket giving spell power and a ton of haste on proc, you can definitely expect to see casters hard reserving this, forming their pugs in Naxx 10. The reason this makes it on the list is because unlike 25-man, where the trinkets that we're about to look at from Naxx drop from multiple bosses, you will only be able to get Embrace of the Spider from Mayexna in the Arachnid Quarter, so you get one shot a week at it, and that's it. Like I said, expect hard reserves. Sarfarian in the Obsidian Sanctum drops 2 of the most sought-after trinkets, one for melee, one for range. The melee one being Fury of the 5 Flights, which each time you deal melee or range damage to an opponent, you gain 16 attack power for 10 seconds, and this stacks up to 20 times. This is extremely strong for many melee classes. And then Illustration of the Dragon Soul for the casters, which each time you cast a damaging or healing spell, you gain 20 spell power for the next 10 seconds, and this stacks 10 times. So you're going to get 200 spell power from this which is quite literally the most static amount of spell power, because let's face it, once you start attacking, you build it up, then it's static. So you got a bit of ramp up time until that point, but it's definitely got the most spell power on in tier 7. And then venturing into Nax 25, you're going to have Dying Curse, Forethought Talisman, and Grim Toll. All of these have a chance of dropping from Grobulus, Mayexna, Gothic the Harvester, and Hygen the Unclean. All of these for specific classes are really strong. Starting with Forethought Talisman, most healers are going to want this. Holy Paladins are an exception to the rule because they'll be going for things like the JC trinket and Darkmoon card greatness to get as much intellect as physically possible. But everyone else will happily take the 111 bonus healing and a chance for a hot on the target that you're healing at the time. In tier 7, there isn't any other trinket that gives as much static bonus healing outside of Illustration of the Dragon Soul, which most DPS are going to probably get before healers. So needless to say, people are going to be fighting for this one. The same applies for casters when it comes to Dying Curse. We all know how much of a pain it can be to get hit capped, so getting a trinket with so much hit on this early on in the game and having a massive 765 spell power proc for 10 seconds is huge. I can't think of a single caster class that wouldn't want to get their hands on this, so expect it to be very contested. Whereas Grim Toll is a bit of a strange one. As most of you may know, Armor Pen is one of those stats that gets stronger the more of it that you get, and because there isn't massive amounts of Armor Pen in tier 7, it really shouldn't be heavily contested. Don't get me wrong, it's still amazing for warriors, feral, combat rogues, marksman hunters, or even frost DKs, as an example, but it will be more about the hit. Going into tier 8 with it for people wanting to stack their armor pen in the tier 8 hard modes will be important, but I would hope by the time tier 8 comes out, most of your melee will have a Grim Toll either equipped or in the bank anyway. There are a few trinkets from Saffron as well, but honestly, none of them are that mind-blowingly amazing, and you shouldn't expect much competition on them. The only slight exception would be Bandit's Insignia, because it does have a decent amount of attack power on it. It's just a shame about the proc. There's a couple of trinkets that drop from Malagos, but really the only one worth even worrying about is Mark of Norgannon, which gives you 69 expertise and on use increasing your haste by 491. This could be particularly good for the likes of enhancement shamans or even rep paladins, but I honestly wouldn't expect much competition on it. Now, while we're still talking about trinkets, I want to leave you with one more. It doesn't come from a dungeon, a profession, or even a raid. It's actually a reputation, and the reputation is the Oracles. Now, the Oracle Talisman that you can get exalted with the Oracles, these are in Sholazar Basin, and you'll do dailies to get reputation with them. Whilst it's not useful in raids, this is quite literally the best farming trinket for any class, and if we get it like it was in original Wrath of the Lich King, they're not unique, so you can actually equip 2 of these, giving you around 3% crit, and every kill while you're out grinding or farming, or even potentially leveling in whatever comes after Wrath of the Lich King, will restore 5% mana, rage, energy, or runic power when you kill a target that grants honor or experience. So needless to say, if you're AoE grinding, if you're single target farming as a level worker and skinner, or whatever you're doing, these are the best trinkets to physically have equipped whilst farming. And I honestly think everyone who intends on going out and even just doing dailies or farming for Eternals or anything like that definitely should get 2 of the Oracle trinkets in your bank, because they are really, really strong. And that's it. That's a quick look into all of the tier 7 trinkets that I think are worth talking about. There are some others, don't get me wrong. Make sure you like and subscribe for lots more videos. There's going to be some big ones coming over the next week or so. I'm working on them in the background. Hopefully after the weekend I'll start releasing them. It's going to be all about gearing guides, routes to 80, and so much more. So smash that subscribe button, roll the outro.
There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.